Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Ben, and today I have for you my top 10 books of 2022. I am so excited to bring this to you because I had probably my greatest reading year of my life and so many great reads. I've read 99 books so far, and 42 of them I gave 5 stars. So these are the books where I was just engaged from start to finish, immersed with these characters in these settings, transported to another time and place. These are the ones that got to me emotionally, that made me feel like I learned something about myself, about other people's experiences that are different from mine, new things about the world, the universe, things that opened up new horizons of my existence. I loved these books, and it was hard for me to sort them into a top 10, so I'm going to give you a bit of a Brian Lee Durfee top 10. Pretty big one here with a lot of honorable mentions. I tried to keep it to one book per series, but I'm kind of cheating on that a little bit. But it's my channel, so this is the top 10 list I want to do. Let's get to the honorable mentions. The first is a bit of a trio. That's the first 3 Sharp books by Bernard Cornwell. Sharp's Tiger, and then Sharp's Triumph, and Sharp's Fortress. So these books are a kind of starting trilogy in this historical fiction series. And this is the year I discovered Bernard Cornwell, and he's become one of my favorite authors. You don't have to be too intimidated jumping into this long Sharp series, because after this, they're mostly standalones, but these 3 are kind of a very connected trilogy with lots of characters and that have an arc over these 3. And it was just really, really gripping historical fantasy. They all kind of start with a small battle, and they end with a much more important, kind of large-scale battle, and really high stakes personal things are going on in the middle, in the more fictional plots. And I just found these very well plotted, and I did a lot of them over audio, and the audiobook narrator Rupert Farley is one of the best, most engaging narrators I've ever heard. So yeah, don't feel intimidated, jump into Sharp. You could treat the beginning of the Sharp series as a trilogy, and it has a satisfying ending, and you don't even have to go on from there. These indie books, just awesome. Then I have a new release, that's Babel by R.F. Kuang. This one I was just fully engaged with, really appreciated the real-world themes, and yeah, just a huge step up for me from the last 2 books of the Poppy War trilogy, which I didn't love. So just really excited to see R.F. Kuang going forward. Daughter of Red Winter by Ed McDonald. This one was more of a slower-paced, very deep kind of character study, and I found myself really empathizing with this main character. I had no clue where it was going. It was very surprising. The relationship building, the internal characterization is really complex. Yeah, McDonald really impressed me. Mickey 7, this was a very fun, kind of breezy sci-fi novel. I was about to say standalone, but there's a sequel coming out next year that I can't wait for. Yeah, this one, just a great little diversion that got me much more emotionally invested than I thought I would. And now here we have all of the Sun Eater books that I can't include in my top 10. So that's Empire of Silence. Oh, what a wonderful start to this series. This is a chronicling tale done to perfection. I don't think I could possibly find this main character to be more relatable, and yes, what a wonderful setup for an epic sci-fantasy series. I'll include the Lesser Devil. We get a different POV here, and just loved it. Loved the different take on this character when we weren't stuck inside Hadrian's POV, and just really opened up the world a little bit more. And then Howling Dark. This sequel started to blow my mind with the direction this series was taken. Just so creative, so full of thought-provoking ideas and characters. Just loved it. And then Kingdoms of Death. This book, by the title, you can probably predict that it's a bit heavy, and it was. Oh my goodness, I was very emotional reading this book. It was a tough ride, but a worthwhile one, and I'm super, super excited to pick up the next book, Ashes of Man, soon. Alright, now to number 10, we have 2 books, Leviathan Wakes and Caliban's War. That's books 1 and 2 of the Expanse series by James S. A. Corey, Daniel Abraham, and Ty Frank. I could not decide which one I liked more, and so they tied for 10. little cheating there, but that's okay. This was a fantastic start to The Expanse, which I'm currently reading right now. I read these just a few weeks ago, and I'm into book 6 and enjoying my time with it. Yeah, these books were fantastic. I had seen the show a few years ago, and the first couple seasons, so my memory for some of these characters and plot points was still there, but I still was gripped. So Leviathan Wakes has just 2 POVs, and they alternate every chapter, and I loved how they did this where one of the authors wrote one POV, the other author wrote the other, and so they have such distinctive voices and tones to them. One POV has a kind of literary noir style, the other's more kind of modern, accessible sci-fi, and just fit the characters so well. And the way the plot goes in this was so suspenseful. Just absolutely loved this one. And then book 2, though, picks right back up, but with new characters that I just grew so attached to and loved. Avasarala and Bobby, the new POVs. Yeah, just could not have loved these 2 books more for what they are, which is kind of high-stakes, modern, accessible sci-fi, very hard science fiction, too. That's a very believable take on a near future. And I haven't read many of those where we're in the kind of colonizing the solar system kind of period, and we haven't gone beyond yet. So very intriguing premise, and yeah, enjoying the series a lot so far, and excited to see where it goes. Number 9 is the only reread on this list. So I don't reread too often, but this year I just got the urge to reread The Dresden Files, which is one of my favorite series of all time, and I have Turncoat here, which on this reread was the one that kind of provided my most surprising, rewarding experience. So the books after this is book 11, from 12 up to where we are now, some of my favorites of all time. Changes, Ghost Story, Cold Days, Skin Game, Battleground. Those are my favorite books of all time. But I had read those either very recently or had reread them a couple times before. And this one I had only read once. And this is the point, book 11, where the series starts to really shift and become something deeper and more epic. And so I was just in awe of how fun and enjoyable this was. In my memory, I didn't remember a lot of the details, so it was like reading it fresh and new. And there's so much deep character building going on with Harry and some of the side characters and his relationships with them. And this is the point also where the case of the week, I think, starts to now become something that's intimately tied up with the overarching plots that are really opening up and becoming more epic. And yeah, everything here worked for me. There was lightness still, but kind of mixed in with the drama. The action was suspenseful. The plotting was really twisty and had some great plot moments, new locations that we haven't seen before. Yeah, I just love this one to death. A lot of fun on reread. And if you are in Dresden and kind of the first 10 books and you're kind of slowly going through that, I challenge you to get to this one and to not just start consuming them one after the next, because they are just so, so good. Number 8 is a book 1 of a very famous series that I finally tried, which is A Game of Thrones by George R. R. Martin. So I had seen the whole Game of Thrones show when it was airing. I'd seen season 1 a couple times, and so I really didn't know what to expect coming to the reading experience. I did not expect to be completely engaged the whole way through. The setup that this book does while being so engaging on its own is just so impressive. There are so many POVs here, and they all felt so unique and distinct individuals. They have their own worldviews, the way that they speak and think, their own priorities and concerns. It just established the cast so perfectly, and we get so much world building and exposition delivered so organically. We get little bits of history here and there, and geography and politics, all very naturally through characters' thoughts and conversations. And even the side characters here that didn't have POVs had such clever, lively dialogue that they just really came alive off the page. I was so impressed by the intelligence of the dialogue and the writing, and how invested I got in these characters, even when I knew what was going to happen. And so yeah, I can't wait to keep going with this one. Number 7 is a series finale. That is The Lost Metal by Brandon Sanderson. So this is the only one on this list, actually, that I didn't really love all the way through. the beginning really wasn't working for me. I thought it was a very clunky setup. The politics in the main city of Ellendale just did not have me engaged at all. Did not think it was really necessary to spend that much time with it. But the middle was just a delight. It was action-packed, really fun world-building things going on. And then the end really was a perfect culmination for me of a series that I'd been reading for years, characters I'd been with for years, and had books that I'd been rereading. And it got me emotional. And I don't get really emotional too often, but when that book is really starting to get those tear ducts a little active toward the end, that's when I know it has touched me deeply in a way that is truly genuine and brought an end to a series that was really cathartic and satisfying. And Sando is one of the only authors that can do that for me. And so I love endings, love series endings, and this one was very, very impressive. For number 6, we have something very different. That is Ogres by Adrian Tchaikovsky, a standalone novella, just 150 pages long. I read this one in one sitting. I could not stop. It was just mind-blowing in the twists and turns this plot was taking. I was very attached to the POV storytelling character. I could not get enough of this. I don't want to say almost anything about it. Just go in blind. See if you can get your hands on this nice hardcover. It's a limited edition, though, so you might have to resort to the ebook or audiobook. But if you get the hardcover, just know it's one you're going to want to reread. You're going to want to lend it to people around you. You'll get your money's worth out of this story because it is fantastic and thought-provoking and just so engaging. It had me gripped for the entire way through. It seems like it was much longer than 150 pages because so much happened of substance, and it was so fast-paced too. Absolutely loved Ogres. For number 5, I have Sharpe's Company by Bernard Cornwell. So this is the 13th book chronologically in the Sharpe series. It is the 3rd book Cornwell wrote in the series and that he ever wrote. And it's a slim 300-page novel, but it packed a punch like I had almost never felt before. This book follows a few really important battles that happened in Spain, on the border between Portugal and Spain in the Napoleonic Wars. It starts with the siege of Ciudad Rodrigo, where the British are assaulting the French forces there, and it ends with the very important battle of the siege of Badajoz, this seemingly impregnable fortress along a river that the British had to storm to defeat the French and try to move their position back out of Portugal and Spain. And a very important battle, and the things that we get between these battles too were just utterly electric, with the personal fictionalized plot happening with Sharpe, our main character. And Cornwell does immersive, high-stakes battles, I think, better than anyone I've experienced. The ones in the India trilogy are fantastic. The ones here are just utterly gripping. You are getting a sensory barrage. You can picture yourself on the battlefield. You can smell the gunpowder. You can taste the dryness from biting off the powder. And you can hear the cannons, feel the rumbles. You can feel the fear of everyone, the excitement of battle. The way Cornwell does battle is so visceral and engaging, just cannot be matched really by anyone I've ever read. And so you get 2 great battles in this book, and some of the character stuff going on around them just fantastic as well. Yeah, one of the most electric reads of my life there, Sharpe's Company. All right, number 4 on my list is another cheat. Those are the last 3 books in the Shadows of the App series by Adrian Tchaikovsky. We have Book 8, The Air War, and then Book 9, War Master's Gate, and Book 10, Seal of the Worm. So this was just a spectacular ending trilogy to a long 10-book series. And the books leading up to this kind of had a different feel. They stuck to one part of the map mostly and told a more focused story. But then these last 3 books just tell the main stories in the different locations that we're at. And they are so fast-paced, so high stakes, and they're all very different too. Book 8, The Air War, is very heavy on action and battle. Book 9, War Master's Gate, is really dealing with the aftermath of a lot of the fighting and the situation that they're in this big war. And then Book 10 was just a stunning conclusion to a long-running series. There are some conclusions to series where you know certain things have to happen, or you have a feel for probably how they're going to end, but I had no clue how Shadows of the Apt was going to wrap up. It felt so unpredictable. I had grown so attached to all the main characters throughout the series, and I just was in utter suspense with how it was going to play out. These 3 books were just perfection for me. I raced through them to finish this series, and if you're interested in a kind of modern, accessibly written, kind of like Sanderson-esque prose style fantasy series with lots of creativity in terms of the magic and lots of interesting kind of real world themes around war, kind of A.J. Tchaikovsky kind of makes the main plot of this book kind of a fantasy version of kind of a mix of World War I and World War II. And I just found the politics and the large scale plotting really, really fascinating, but really got attached to the characters. The battles also very visceral and tense and suspenseful. There's lots of variety in the battles and action, and things really came to a close in a cathartic, satisfying way that didn't leave me feeling hanging about anything, and really left me wanting to spend more time in the world, which is good because there are some collections of short stories from the world that I still want to be able to go back to and spend more time there. Number 3 is A Memory of Light by Brandon Sanderson and Robert Jordan. So this is the final Wheel of Time book. I had read all the other Wheel of Time books at the end of last year, and so I was finishing this one up at the start of 2022, and I mostly enjoyed my time throughout the series. I wouldn't say I'm a Wheel of Time mega fan or anything, but this was my kind of book. This is wrapping up lots of plot lines and character arcs that have been built up over millions of words and thousands of pages. The last battle, the famous last battle chapter that takes a huge chunk of this book, is kind of misleading because most of this book is taking place during the last battle. So it's just frenetically paced. This is really just the last act of the final book that Sanderson had to split up into 3 books. And so this whole book is kind of like a climactic sequence and just had me on the edge of my seat. It definitely got me a little emotional at times, ended in a very interesting and satisfying way. I'm just sad that Robert Jordan passed away before his time and didn't have the time to write more in this world. His sequels that he was planning, and even some of the prequels that he had been planning to, like the sequels to New Spring. I'm sad that we don't get those, but with this whole arc, I think Brandon ended it really well and couldn't have asked for anything more really out of this finale, so really loved that one. My second favorite book of the year is a book 2 from a trilogy. That is Enemy of God by Bernard Cornwell. That's book 2 of the Warlord Chronicles, Cornwell's King Arthur story retelling. And this book had me so emotionally invested. Book 1 did a lot of heavy lifting on setting the scene for the world building, getting familiar with who these people were, the places, the political factions, the religions. It did a lot of setup, and it all paid off spectacularly in this book. I was just immersed from the very beginning, and this book has kind of ebb and flow of really tense kind of action scenes, and then sections that are where people are living just normal, peaceful lives, and I found both sections to be gripping, honestly. And the things that happen toward the climactic sequence of this book were mind-blowing. This is some of the most gripped to any book I have ever been. The last 100 pages, I think I was reading in a daze, and I was dreading what was happening. I was also just wanting to read more and to find out what was going to happen. Just so emotional, so engaging. Yeah, Bernard Cornwell just absolutely killed it for me this year. And I loved Excalibur too, the 3rd book of this trilogy. But this book is just the perfect middle book of a trilogy. I couldn't ask for any better antidote for middle book syndrome. Just a spectacular series. And I did a lot of this immersive reading with Jonathan Keeble's audio narration. That also added a lot because his emotional telling of this story really touched me. And the way Keeble builds up to these climactic moments was just a huge part of how gripped I was, I think. And so this series, just a new favorite of all time. I could not praise the Warlord Chronicles enough. yeah, this was definitely a year of Cornwell for me. My number one book of the year is Demon in White by Christopher Rocchio. That's book 3 in the Sun Eater saga. If it's been a year of Bernard Cornwell for me, it's also been a year of discovering Christopher Rocchio, a new favorite author. So I already put all the other Sun Eater books in my honorable mentions, but this one to me stood out. It is a huge, massive tome, and I was gripped and emotionally invested at every turn, every page, every section. This book has so many different sequences and action set pieces and different types of sections that have a different tone and very different pacing. It was a roller coaster ride of the highest order for me. From the action sequences, where I couldn't have been more tense and dreading what was happening, to the slower sequences where people are just relaxing on a tropical island. I loved every second of it. The parts that were slower did such amazing character development and gave us time to breathe and reflect, and I was just so immersed with these characters, and the way that the political storyline unfolds here was so suspenseful. I had no clue what was going to happen at any point, so I was just along for the ride, and it's been a spectacular journey through Sun Eater. I'm about to pick up Ashes of Man, and the final book is maybe going to come out sometime at the end of this year or next year. This is just a series that I will cherish for the rest of my life. I can't wait for some of the details to fade so that I can read this kind of fresh all over again. It was that mind-blowing, and just, yeah, the writing's beautiful, thought-provoking, but most of all, I'm in awe of how different each of these parts of this book were. They felt like maybe it was like 4 or 5 different novels all in one, but that were really part of the same story. It just gave such a unique kind of flow to this read that kept me gripped for over 700 pages. I don't see a way that this book could have been any better. It's pretty much perfection. And for fantasy fans out there, this series is called sci-fantasy. It really feels like you're reading a fantasy epic, kind of in the far future, in space. I think fans of sci-fi and fantasy would love Sun Eater. And Christopher Rocchio, I think, is basically a writing prodigy. He wrote Empire of Silence kind of right out of college, I think, and that one I felt was almost flawless. And this book just blew me away. I can't wait to see what Rocchio comes out with next, both at the end of Sun Eater and beyond, because he's just such an engaging author for me. So there we go. Those are my top books of 2022. Tell me if you've read any of these and what you thought. Tell me what you're excited about trying at some point, and let me know what some of your top books of the year were as well. So I'll see you later.